You ask a group of people young or old who their favorite superhero is, there's a great chance you'll be told,
I still love being Spider-Man.
The one and only Spider-Man.
So I'm Spider-Man. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
I am the spectacular Spider-Man!
Spider-Man is a cultural icon. He's not only one of the most popular superheroes, but one of the most popular things in the world, which isn't hard to believe looking at the character's history. Spider-Man has gotten so many pieces of media throughout his existence that it's become practically impossible to not know him. He's got over like 1,000+ comic books, 10 theatrical films with 2 more coming out within the next couple years, plus however many spin-offs they're gonna make, and over 60 video games. The Wallcrawler has swung across so many forms of entertainment, but arguably his strongest stint in pop culture has been through animation. Spider-Man has made his mark of having a total of 11 animated shows, with the most recent one, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, releasing earlier this year, and its second season set to drop next year. He's been getting these shows since the 1960s. For a lot of us growing up in our childhood, there was a Spider-Man show airing on TV that allowed us to become accustomed to the web slinger. Outside of TV shows, Spider-Man's biggest animated splash has to be the super successful Spider-Verse films that are setting new precedents for both the character and the animation industry as a whole. Spider-Man has thrived in animation for years, not only because of the amount of shows making it easy for people to become familiar with the character, but also because the medium itself has been shown to suit the character more than any other. For starters, animation is one of the most expressive forms of art, which is why it works so well with Spider-Man, as he himself is a very expressive character, from the bright red and blue spandex to his colorful cast of rogues and friends. A lot of animated Spider-Man projects pride themselves in being as colorful and exciting to watch just as the comics are, or at least were, because I don't know what the fuck they doing over there nowadays.
Arguably, Spidey's most popular and influential animated appearance came from the 1994 Fox Kids iteration, run and developed by John Semper Jr. as part of Marvel's budding animated universe. While many of his classic stories were revised and reimagined in this series to fit the Saturday morning cartoon format, the heart and tone of Spider-Man was perfectly preserved, and this is one of the most faithful adaptations of the character's personality ever put to screen. While the art style skewed more towards realism than its other animated superhero contemporaries like Superman and Batman, the animation lent itself to making Spider-Man very expressive in costume. From the subtle changes in the shape and size of his masked eye lenses to the thoughtfully storyboarded poses and gestures that convey his emotions, Spidey as a 2D drawing looked full of life in this show. While this particular animated series had its fair share of budget cuts and had to reuse animations of him swinging and fighting from time to time, the motion on display here still looks incredible on the scenes where they could really emphasize the agility and strength of the character. I'm always amazed by how consistently they draw all those web lines on the costume between frames, and I can see why later 2D iterations of the character opted to simplify parts of the costume, because that looks like intensive work. But maybe taking the details down a notch could help Spidey in animation look even better. Case in point, the next major Spidey 2D series, Spectacular Spider-Man.
Spectacular Spider-Man is not only some of my favorite Spider-Man content, but animated content in general. Not only for storytelling, because we'll get there, but really due to how well animated it is compared to its other action cartoon peers. Spectacular Spider-Man is one of the weirder looking Spidey shows, but it's intentional, as the team wanted a more simple art style so they could truly capture the character's unique and fast movements.
The one thing I emphasized to Vic Cook is that this has got to be a Spider-Man that moves.
Action is a big part of Spider-Man, and that's one of the most fun parts of storyboarding on this show, because really it's a free-handed choreography. There's a big Hong Kong flair to what we want to bring to it, to make it as over the top as possible, because that's what Spider-Man is, and to bring a lot of speed and motion to it.
Action was a huge focus for the show, and you can tell that was true, because man, the action in this show is top tier. Spider-Man is animated with such fluidity in this show. He leaps, he flips, he dodges, he does so much more, and it all looks so smooth. Even when he gets punched or knocked around, it looks smooth. It feels like you're watching the chaotic and non-stop page-flipping action that is shown in the comics themselves. This show does a fantastic job expressing the action of not only Spider-Man, but his rogues. My favorites being Electro and how his electricity is animated all wild, and that fits this character's portrayal. Sandman and how they handle him morphing in and out with his powers is displayed with that same amount of fluidity that they give Spider-Man. And Shocker's energy wave, both sounding and looking and being super destructive, is all just top tier cinema, even though it's a TV show.
Still, I reckon we can remedy that situation.
Even with this commitment to making sure the show's action was superb, they still wanted the show to stand out even without the action, which is why they brought on Sean Galloway to design a lot of the characters, which definitely helped the show stand out whether you like the designs or not. Action figure looking designs, as I heard them be described as, looks different, yes, but it all still feels very Spider-Man, as these designs help breathe a lot of life into these characters. Goblin is super lanky with a face that suits both his silly and twisted personality. Venom is bulky with tons of muscles and sharp teeth accompanied by a bright red tongue, keeping up that monstrous Spider-Man vibe. Even the civilian designs keep the trend. Peter is able to have his nerdy charm while not it being his entire identity. Flash looks like the bully he is, but doesn't look like a complete jerk because, as you find out in the show, he does have a little heart to him. I just love how the World Spectacular Spider-Man expresses itself while opting to look different, but feeling still most true to the character. It's something that the newest Spider-Man show sorta did the opposite of. The Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is a fairly decent Spider-Man show that had to win people over with the first few episodes. But one thing that I personally was immediately invested into was its art style. Unlike a Spectacular Spider-Man or the new animated series, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man went straight for that classic Lee/Ditko era of Spider-Man look from the 60s, but with 3D instead of 2D animation. Even though the show's animation can look wonky at times, I just love how hard they committed to this art style, especially when they get creative with it, like the whole comic panel transitions and integration they use in some episodes, and just how they completely mixed this 60s comic style with a lot of modern elements, making it one of the more unique Spider-Man shows visually. However, when it comes to Spider-Man getting creative, getting in its bag visually, you can't go without mentioning Spider-Verse. Spider-Verse in its animation/art style literally pioneered a new genre of animation by just how beautifully it looks and how well it represented the world of Spider-Man. I mean, like, where do I even start with Spider-Verse? There's just so much this movie offers, like how the different Spider-Men all have their unique styles that correspond to their respective universe, so much that they even maintain that look when crossing over to other universes. My favorite, of course, being Hobie's chaotic collage looking art style that like never stops changing, and Gwen's pastel like universe that uses tons of watercolors. The way the visuals convey the story, like the scene where Gwen reveals her identity to her father and the background keeps changing, playing into the mood of the scene, is all just perfect. Spider-Verse's style feels like a genuine comic book come to life, with how the movie plays with colors and lighting of the environment to display both fun and depressing sides of characters. Everything you see in this movie has some personality embedded into it, making it one of the most rewatchable Spider-Man things ever, just all its visuals alone.
Into the Spider-Verse is one of those major watershed moments for cinema and the animation medium. All of these new stylistic choices and visual techniques they implemented to make the movie feel more like a comic soon became commonplace and standard. But because of these advancements, animated films have flourished with the ability to do more unique art styles. For a long time, it felt like 3D animated films in the West were locked into the photorealistic art style of DreamWorks or the more soft look of Pixar. And even those don't offer a huge difference between each other when they're not focused on human characters in particular. Spider-Verse's uniquely painted dot textures, cel-shaded colors, and simulated 2D line work give it this brand new feel that's a feast for the eyes, and it opened the door for other animation studios to experiment more with their visual. The sequel to Puss in Boots, Intergalactic, Arcane, even K-pop Demon Hunters all have a slice of Spider-Man in their DNA. Spider-Verse really popularized a mixed media approach with 2D elements intermixed with 3D ones, like all these hand-animated particle effects or onomatopoeia sound effects appearing on screen to emphasize impact or speed. In order to make a truly authentic Spider-Man experience in animation, they went all out, and it revolutionized their industry in a way that we'll be talking about forever. And that sort of innovation and experimentation being used on a character so near and dear to my heart is really exciting to see. There's a version of Spider-Verse that played it a lot safer with its animation style somewhere out there in the multiverse, and looked a lot more like a typical Pixar DreamWorks type movie. But I'm glad they took a big risk and got inventive, because it makes makes a film about celebrating uniqueness stand out that much more.
While visuals and art styles play a huge part in how Spider-Man became so successful in animation, the biggest reason is because of the overall narrative and story structure these projects have. We gushed over the beauty of Spider-Verse, but the real beauty comes within the movie's writing. I'll never get over the whole intervention scene, how it goes from this informal scene about the consequences of messing with the multiverse to a tense scene of everyone ganging up on Miles, all while being a faithful deconstruction of the Spider-Man character. From talking about the basics of canon events in the past that these Spider-Mans are all destined to walk on, sort of recontextualizing all the events in the Spider-Man lore that there's something that every single one of them must go through, to then seeing Miles demonstrate a core Spider-Man value, which is wanting to save the world without losing a single life in the process. And knowing that it might be impossible, Miles will still try to do so anyway. On the contrast, you then have a show like Spectacular Spider-Man that shows his strengths in a much smaller scale, giving us a Peter who struggles with his day-to-day life because of his superhero alter ego that he never asked for.
I never asked to be Spider-Man. I never asked for these powers. I never knew it would mean a bashed up hand, a hard 9 p.m. curfew, no job, and friends who all think I'm scum.
However, when given the option with nothing physically standing in his way, he chooses to keep being Spider-Man because it's just the right thing to do. It's his responsibility. And you know, with great power comes great responsibility.
Spider-Man's no magic wand, but thanks to the webhead, Kurt's cured, and Billy gets his father back. So what if nobody threw a parade? Spidey stays because Spidey's needed.
This amount of tight storytelling is why everyone begs for this show to come back. Where else can we see Peter's high school years expertly adapted with such rich storytelling, like the painful slow burn of Gwen and Peter's relationship, the mystery of the Green Goblin, the decline of Peter and Eddie's relationship that leads into the Venom arc? Which, by the way, all happens with Peter dealing with his own struggles, like being broke, his moments of extremely horrible luck, or, my personal favorite, his human mistakes that lead to strong consequences, like prioritizing his money from the Daily Bugle over his relationship with Eddie in the science lab. Now, this isn't me trying to say that the live action movies don't have good narratives, but instead it's me saying that in animation, these stories have a richer feel to them because of how closer they get to feeling like the original media. When a Spider-Man show has a strong narrative, it has the vibe of reading a comic run all the way through. However, Spider-Verse though is just in its own league. I mean, that shit is like one of one, just simply because of how much the narrative works well with the animation. I mean, watching Miles blossom into becoming Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse works as well as it does because of how he's doubted by the others and how he realistically struggles, which is all enhanced by how clumsy and inexperienced he moves within the movie. But then you see him earn his confidence through a heartwarming talk with his father, and then you get moments like his reflection finally lining up with the Spider-Man outfit, or the imagery of him rising, all makes the narrative strike harder because of how synchronized both the animation and the storytelling is together. It all makes you feel for something that honestly isn't even real. I mean, it's just animated.
When it comes to faithfully adapting comics into a new medium, my preference will always be doing it through animated television. Television because it allows more room to capture long, serialized stories than a 2-hour film ever could without feeling bloated or overcomplicated. A full-size season of television has so much more time dedicated to both plot and characters, so it's not having to struggle to choose one or the other like the majority of comic book films seem to. You can devote time to side characters from Spidey's comics like Liz Allen, Flash Thompson, and Harry Osborn, while still telling a clear and focused story in this format. These two are rich characters with their own story arcs that reflect and even strengthen what Peter is going through on his own. They have so much history to them that I never see in the movies. The movies struggled so much more with this side cast, often having to downplay them or cut them out entirely for stringent runtime. This is of course pretty disappointing because some of my favorite material in Spider-Man comics are the realistic personal life he has between costumed adventures that changes and evolves, with these characters heavily influencing the course of events. The Peter Parker home life stuff is what makes the character interesting and unique. I can watch dozens of costumed superheroes punching people, but I gotta know if this one is going to get evicted at the end of the month because he spent all his rent money on the parts to make new web shooters. Are Liz and Harry going steady? Is Harry mentally stable enough for a serious relationship again after his battles with drug addiction? What will Flash think since he and Liz used to date and Harry is his friend? Has Flash redeemed himself enough to become Peter's friend after all these years of them being rivals? Can Peter help Flash finally get sober since he's turned to alcoholism after his time in the military? A movie doesn't have time for things like this, so they really don't even try. But this stuff is, for better or worse, the real meat of Spider-Man stories and what makes the book what it is. So I say TV is the way to go, but specifically animated shows because of how unrestrained that medium is too. The reason it took until the new millennium to even attempt a really accurate Spider-Man in live action is because the stories are fantastical in a way that is nearly unfilmable without heavy CG animation, which is costly for a production like this. However, pulling it all the way into the realm of animation means there are no limits. No superpowers too impossible, no character too strange or otherworldly, no feat of superheroic action and adventure too miraculous to film, no costumes too ridiculous to take seriously, and most certainly no location too difficult to place our characters. The same budgetary restrictions and logistics of what is filmable do not apply to animation. If you want Spidey to go to a helicarrier, you just draw it. No one needs to rent out a decommissioned aircraft carrier to digitally alter and post to add giant turbines, or build a massive set for the bridge and agonize for months over making dozens of S.H.I.E.L.D. uniforms for the extras to wear that look good on camera. You just draw it. God forbid 3D model it, but still. Live action may look the closest to reality, but reality is overrated. Fantasy and impossible unreality are what makes superhero action so exciting, and that really does work better when animated. Hell, the only way live action can come close to achieving these things is by, guess what? Animating it. Like, sure, the textures on these 3D models look really realistic, and they try to mix it with these live action elements like these actors, and a cartoon is a cartoon is a cartoon, so why not cut out the middleman on a green screen and just embrace animation as the superior way to make the impossible images of comics just a little bit more alive?
When compared to live action, animation offers much more freedom and area to work with when handling characters with long and rich histories. The Spider-Man cartoons rarely retell the origin of Peter Parker, and when they do, you still get to follow them in their journey like episodes later without having to wait for a sequel to come out like the theatrical films. Animation is able to present itself in a structure similar to that of comics, allowing watchers to get sucked into the story and not being yanked out suddenly because a 2-hour movie can only cover so much material that'll be resumed in the second part years from now. I mean, like, I know this kind of like doesn't have my point, but you're kind of seeing that with like Spider-Verse, but I ain't gonna say too much on that. Disney XD's Marvel Spider-Man, while not being the best Spider-Man show out there, is an example how these shows are able to spread their wings and do their own thing, even if they didn't go anywhere successful with it. Only a couple episodes in season 1 retells Peter's origin in its own way, while the other 2.5 seasons tell a completely new Spider-Man story that, even though it may suck ass, it's still new and not force-feeding you the same content for majority of its runtime. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man had the freedom to do its own thing off the back of MCU Spider-Man, being able to freely work with their ideas that allow to make a, what some would say, better version of MCU Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man, another more frowned upon Spidey show, did something similar, but what stood out about it, other than Peter's weird fourth wall breaks, was how the show had Peter working on a team of other heroes and how he interacted with like many other characters, both obscure and popular. While Ultimate Spider-Man isn't the pinnacle of Spider-Man shows, that little novelty of seeing a Spider-Man be so involved with the other characters in his world gives the show plenty of rewatchability, and why some people loved it growing up. I mean, heck, the first ever version of Spider-Verse happened in the 90s animated series. Stuff like that are things that the movies took years to cover or still have yet to showcase. But honestly, it's something only animation and of course the comics can ever really achieve on such a large scale.
Spider-Man's classic stories from the Lee and Ditko era have been reinterpreted in animated form time and again. Like his first battle with the Vulture, his tragic origin story, trying to cure the Lizard, and meeting his nemesis, the Green Goblin. These stories are timeless, and it's fun to see new interpretations of them with new art direction, new character design, new voice actors, and with variations to the overall plot to keep things fresh. I only wish more classic Spidey stories from writers like Gary Conway through to J. Michael Straczynski would be adapted, because there's decades of great material that is mostly unused unless it involves symbiote. That being said, there's still such a huge depth of stories and characters to tap that Spider-Man in animation has enough material to keep going pretty much indefinitely. And I look forward to seeing all the different art styles, styles, new voice performances, and new ways the character can be reinvented and portrayed that maintain the heart of the comics but bring a new creative voice to the table too. Spider-Man is a timeless and enduring character, and I think no medium is more timeless than animation. It's the perfect way to bring a character to life from the land of comics, far more so than live action because it truly has no limits except imagination.
Spider-Man is a timeless superhero with the ability to appeal to every generation, and through animation, the character is able to keep that appeal in fresh and unique ways. It's why no matter how bad the last animated Spider-Man show is or how long Beyond the Spider-Verse takes to make, I'll always be excited for a new animated Spider-Man project. And with all the news coming out about a Spider-Punk movie spin-off thing and Spider-Woman and all these other things, I will have my ass wherever it is. The theater, in front of my TV, whatever, I will be there. But let me know how you feel about Spider-Man's animated adventures and which one is your favorite. Big thanks to Godzilla Mendoza for taking the time to join me on this video. All his links will be below, so go check him out if you want more comic book related content.
Thanks so much to Dan for inviting me to talk about this subject. It was a lot of fun to go over, and it's an honor to be here. Give him a sub for me, will ya? And see you next time.
Until next time, it's been your boy Dan, the Boy Wonder, signing out. Peace.